Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for April 21st, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen, and also present are Aaron McHale, Christina Chunias, and Ralph Kohler. So I'm looking at the issue for today's meeting, 335-4271. Let me actually start by having a brief look at, if I can find it. Yes. Here we go. Move the block layout from structure to appearance. This is issue 331-8112. This is the last step in our reorganization of the block content items in the administration menu. So we already have block types directly under structure. We have moved the custom block library under content and renamed it simply the block tab there. And the last part of the plan is to take the block layout page, which has subtabs for each enabled theme, and move that under appearance because it has a similar navigation structure to settings. So that's what this issue is about. It is already RTBC, but it still needs subsystem maintainer review. And I pinged Tim Plunkett asking for that. We just yesterday, I think, got approval from Gabor as product manager. But Aaron, I'd also like you to have another look at it as sort of a back-end developer and see if there are any improvements you can recommend to the code. Do you think you'll have a chance to do that?
Yeah, I can do. I think I have a feeling I've given it a look over, but probably not in much detail. I'm aware there's also a companion issue around sort of that we've looked at around the redirects and things like that. So I think most of the, as I understand it, a lot more of the logic that we're relying on is in that separate issue. Is that right?
No, I think this issue will do enough by itself. We're still going to want that other issue as a follow-up.
Okay. Yeah.
But I need to do a little more work on that one. Here we go. Just for reference, the one Aaron is talking about is 335-1750, which will create redirects for children of the paths that already have redirects. I have some more work I need to do on that one, despite the fact that it's marked RTBC. But I think this one does not have to get in by the alpha deadline, and anything that actually changes paths probably has to get into the alpha, which is coming up next week. So we're really getting close to the deadline.
Is there I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to highlight this is like a soft blocker in some ways to the alpha, if it, I don't want to say it's a blocker, but you know what I mean, like if there's a way that we can, if there's a tag we can use to highlight that or something, just so that release managers are aware that this needs to be, it would be really good if this was committed before they tag the alpha. I don't know if there is, but I know for like major releases, there's sort of processes like that, but
let's see, where
I'm not seeing anything for minors.
data blocker, blocker, release blocker, distributed project blocker.
Nothing specific there. Yeah.
So, and I'm not sure it has to be in by the alpha. It may be that that getting it in by the beta is good enough. But I would like to play it safe, and I would like to get it in the alpha if we can. But you know, Lee Rollins is a committer, and he's involved in all of this. So yeah, I don't think we actually need to.
Yeah. It's also further recording is worth highlighting around the renaming issue that we did a lot of work on, and that we have effectively purged the term custom block from most of admin UI. I say most because, you know, you never know, or could have missed something. It was a big merge request, so it's always possible something sneak through. But yeah, that's good because you know, it helps to provide more clarity around that these are content blocks, and that issue was a good milestone to land that one as well.
Right, so this is the issue Aaron's talking about. Rename custom block terminology in the admin UI. It's 331-8549, part of the same meta issue.
Yeah.
Why doesn't it have screenshots?
That's ironic.
Okay, but you wanted to talk about this issue, I think.
Yeah, and that well, that actually leads on nicely to talking about this, and I sort of summarized why I think we really should talk about this one, and I'll just read what I put in the comment. So the fact that the block placement list.
Well, you know, for the sake of the recording, start by reading the issue title and number.
Oh, sure, yeah. So the one we're looking at is issue 3153092. A set block category to bundle in block content module, and the issue itself is fairly straightforward in terms of what it's trying to do. It's essentially saying that when you go to look at, say, you know, when you go to into the block placement area, all of the custom blocks, now content blocks, are just to have the category. Well, it was custom. It's now content, thanks to the issue we just got committed. But this issue is really looking to say, if you had a lot of the content blocks, you know, that it would be better if they were grouped by their type, which I think is sensible, to have that grouping. The reason I think it's important that we provide that issue some guidance, and I tagged it, is what I wrote was the fact that the block placement list uses the word categories to group blocks, and that's you know, it's mixing in blocks that are content blocks, but also the blocks that are provided out of the box through code or configuration or other modules will provide. So things like the site title block, you know, the menu blocks. So the block placement list uses the term category to group everything, and the fact that the term categories or categories is used to group blocks was part of our rationale for recommending that we simply use the term block types to describe the block content modules block types. So previously, when under structure, you know, we had you know, you would go to block structure, block layout, and then custom blocks, and then block types. When we originally, when we were working on that, and we moved block types up to the top level of structure, we had a few ideas of how we should call them, whether we should call them content block types or block content types, and part of the rationale there was, well, we want to make sure we're not confusing that with other kinds of blocks, like the ones I described, like come with core or other modules. But the fact that the block placement list uses the term categories there helps to create that distinction between what we call block types and then these broader categories. So I think it's important that we give some guidance around this issue so that we don't effectively result in these categories containing both the categories, for instance, core, system, views, which are categories that you'll see in that list, are menus as well, and also then mixing in the names of the block types in that list. So we want to be really clear about the difference, if only from a documentation perspective, you know, that block categories and block types are distinctively separate things. So there's a risk here that we could be conflating those by displaying simply the block type in this column, in that sort of column on the right that Ben just got on his screen there. So that's kind of a summary of where we are. And I see Ralph has his hand up, so I'll happily hand over to Ralph to see what he's going to say.
Thank you. One additional problem which complicates things further. A user is able to, for example, I've tried the following. It's an edge case, but underlines the problem Aaron outlined. You're able to create, for example, a block type named forms. And then you are able to create a content block named, for example, search form, parentheses open, narrow, parentheses closed. So you have two identical blocks with completely diametrical opposite content. Basically, one is the one shipping with core, and the other is basically a content block with maybe 5 or 7 different field types in it. So that might be confusing and difficult to distinguish for the user.
You're saying I named the block type form?
Forms.
Forms, plural.
Yeah.
Okay. And then
go into the block type. No, go to the content and create a content block. Forms.
Yeah, and this is obviously not only could be this be slightly confusing for users, but as a site administrator, this might also just throw you off. You think, wait, where did this extra form come from?
Could you name it? Sorry, Benji. Could you go up to the search and edit and name it search space form? Small cap form.
Okay.
And then in parentheses narrow at the end.
Like so.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Then I go back to this page and reload that modal window again. And
oh, there you have not the narrow. Okay. Yeah, but under I had a example I've posted in one of the threads in the blog content channel, and in that screenshot there are two identical ones.
so,
and if you place it, for example, then on the block layout you don't have the category for distinguishing the different ones, and then it's difficult.
so I guess what I'm missing here is there's already work done on this issue. I don't see any screenshots on it. So the point is that if we use the suggestion rather than current version of core, then instead of content block in this column, we will have the block type, which we set to form or forms.
Yeah.
Forms plural.
Yes.
So if just using browser tools to simulate the effect of that issue.
It would be sorted differently also. Then it wouldn't be placed at the top, like at the moment, or you just renamed it, but it would be alongside the other forms.
Yes.
Underneath, so.
Okay, so that is well, as you say, that's an edge case. I had a similar thing when working on the permissions forms, that if someone creates a role called module, I think it is, or does something similarly strange, you'll end up with some odd breadcrumbs. But anyway, I think also sort of less of an edge case is that currently all of the content blocks are grouped together. And if you replace content block, the words content block, with the type of the block, as this issue seems to be proposing, then you'll have all of the, you will no longer have all of the content blocks together. So perhaps an alternative, although it's getting rather long, is to put the type after the word content block, and then all of the content blocks will still be grouped together and they'll be subgrouped by block type.
But that has an accessibility problem. If you append the name at the end instead of front loading it, that way you have content block forms, content block core, content block X, content block C, and that way it's difficult to scan. You always have to scan two words and the what is the name for Doppelpunkt? The two dots. I forget the name always. Sorry. And it's hard to read and to process. It's the other way around. Forms content block is easier to read.
I wonder if simply adding another column for types is maybe better, because my main concern, and the reason I flagged this ultimately, was around the potential for confusion between what a category is and what a type is. And those are different things. You know, content blocks are a category of, in this case, are a category of blocks, but within those you have types of content blocks. And I didn't want to risk, if anything, as I said, from a documentation perspective, and a sort of learning perspective, I didn't want to risk us causing confusion between or conflating categories and types. So I wonder if just adding types as a column here is maybe a slightly better approach.
So you're worried that even though we're using different words, we're using category and type, those words are synonyms in ordinary English.
Yeah.
And so you're afraid that people will get them confused, even if we use them consistently.
Well, it's more that here we describe these things as categories. So, or categories. So if we have because I don't know if like content block forms is probably fine, because things are still being grouped by content blocks, but it's just, you know, there's the fact that we're sort of mixing in the types under the category column when types and categories are, are different things, they have different meanings, was the thing I was slightly worried about.
Ralph, go ahead.
I like the idea with categories. Would it make sense? Because that was one of my core points I tried to communicate in the thread is, would it make sense to have, for example, 3 categories, one for core, one for content blocks, and one for, let's say, contrib. And inside core, you have the types core, system, forms, and so forth. The categories, the things that are currently named categories. And for content block, the content block category, you have all the different types from the content type page, block type page. And for contrib, I'm not sure if it would be necessary to have any types in air quotes, or it could be up to the maintainers of the contrib module to create their own custom types.
Yeah, that's an interesting possibility. And I think the last time we talked about this, someone pointed out that what gets entered in this column is pulled from the class annotations on the block plugin creating it. And I kind of like having the idea of adding a separate column. So for a block that's created by a specific PHP class, have all of those have the same thing under category, but then the next column could have whatever they say in their annotation or the module name. So we'd have a smaller number of categories. We'd have content blocks, something describing a block plugin provided by a PHP class. Views, I think perhaps deserves its own category, and rather than say lists of views, we might split that over the 2 columns.
But I'm not sure from a non-developer perspective of mine, I would consider it confusing and not helpful if, for example, if I have a category called PHP and the types granularly split up. For me as a user, it's more helpful to know I have content blocks in that category. I have those blocks that come with core, and those come with contrib, and each of the categories could have their own sub categorization, aka types. That is more straightforward and comprehensible for me as a non-developer.
I'm not sure that the distinction between core and contrib is the right distinction we want to make. Is this something that I can add through the admin UI? So if it's a content block, yes, I can create a content block through the admin UI. If it's from a view, then yes, I can create new blocks of that type through the admin UI. If it's from core or from a module, then I can't make new ones of that type, but I can maybe get more if I enable different modules.
Yeah, there may be a module that provides something very similar to the core block content. So it has, bundles with different types.
Just one question for my understanding. For example, could you scroll up a little bit to the views? So lists, in parentheses, views blocks. Are those views that have a block view in it, basically? And those are just the ones that are created by core per default. But if a user adds another view block, then it would be shown there as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's
okay,
exactly
then,
what they are, except that the term is displayed.
Okay, then my
data.
suggestion with a core category doesn't make sense. Okay, I agree then.
So articles aside is a view that creates a block display, and that's alphabetically the first one.
Okay.
And then
okay,
loaded items down here, and recent content and recipe collections. Promoted items, recent content, recipe collections.
Yeah, because the recipe one would be specific to umami.
So what do you think? Shall we make this a recommendation or a suggestion that we have a separate, an additional column in this table?
I think to me it seems like the most logical way to do it. I'm trying to think if I feel like it's a pretty strong recommendation because there's probably good, there's good reasons not to try and put anything more into the category column.
Yep.
I wonder if we call that column types or if we call it something else, though I don't know.
Right. Naming things, that's hard.
Yeah. I mean, that might be something we could just leave up to the issue, and either we come up with ideas later on, or
Well, also looking at this, I don't love these place block buttons. And if there's only one possible operation, shouldn't we make it place block at the top?
Yeah, and it could just say place. It doesn't.
Yeah.
Repeating place block is kind of.
I mean, out of scope, but as long as we're looking at it.
Well, it could be in scope if we rescope the issue.
And one other detail we've mentioned the last time we've talked about it is the difference between the current categories between system and core is also not really apparent.
Yes, so I think that's you know, I think each block plugin chooses a label, and it would be, you know, so it's not all in one place, but we could certainly change these.
Yeah. But me as a user, I have no idea what's functionally the difference between core and system.
Right.
I wonder if like having helpful categories here is obviously really useful. Like for instance, having a forms category, that's quite useful because you know, like, oh, these are forms. Okay, cool. Content blocks category. Okay, that's useful because these are things I can create. These are content. List is, I guess, list with in brackets views. I suppose that's kind of useful because it like describes these things in list. The other ones like page title, tabs. The only thing I can think that describes what they are is their intention is to be used in the theme. So I wonder if something to do with like theme or theme blocks, something that describes those, what their intention is maybe a better way to describe them.
Well, in a sense, any reusable block is intended to be used in the theme, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just thinking like you wouldn't like page title has a very specific use. Tabs is very specific. Like it's very unlikely you'd put more than one of those on the page. Maybe not user login, but like also like there's the site title block. There's there's quite a number that are their specific intention is you place this in a region of your theme, and it's really unlikely you would use them in any other context.
But I question then, main page content is also dedicated just for one page. It is in system, in contrast.
Yeah, and like that is technically that's an example like of a block that again you place in a region, you only place it once. Like you wouldn't I can't think of a reason to place that twice. I also can't think of a reason to place the site title or page title twice. It's meant to be placed in a theme region, and I can't think of a reason you would do anything other than that. So there's certain commonalities across these types of blocks.
Is there anything on this list, Aaron, that doesn't apply to? Is there any block here that you would put twice on a page?
Well, okay, maybe twice is what I mean is the context and where you would use it. Like for instance, yeah, okay, so like the user login is an example of where you might place that in a sidebar, but then you might also place that as on like the main page content on a specific page. And again, I'm thinking like because these categories also come through to Layout Builder, I believe. So there's certain situations where you could be placing a block in different contexts, and that's certainly true for like the content blocks or the views blocks. Like views, you could quite often be placing multiple instances of a views block. Yeah, it's.
I mean, remember, we are on the block layout page. We are looking at blocks for a particular theme. And we get to that modal window by clicking place block. So we just are looking at blocks that can be placed in the theme region. That's what this modal window gives us.
Yeah.
Can we filter on the category? No. We only filter on the block title.
Another thought that's coming to mind is like to get to this list, as you said, you click the place block button. what if, in the interest of saving space, what if we didn't have that operations column at all, and it was the block itself was the link that you click to then get you to the next stage in placing it?
So turn this into a link.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen that pattern being used in other places, and usually the entire row is the link, but we tend not to go that far.
so let me just.
But to be clear, I've seen that pattern being used in other applications, not strictly in Drupal.
Oh, okay.
Home Assistant is one that comes to mind.
Christina, do you have an opinion on this? Hide the entire operations column, but make it a link that you can click on?
I have no idea. Probably yes, but I don't think this is the proper UI pattern to do that. Meaning, I don't think the table is the correct thing to choose stuff from a link. I mean, a link is something that you click and go somewhere. While what you're saying would be like you're clicking on a button or you're clicking on a checkbox or a radio button or like on an HTML perspective, meaning it could work, but I don't think it will be the appropriate change. What I think it could make sense is just that each line is basically the button, like a choose option, whatever, and whatever. But that could mean completely changing everything.
Are you saying like have checkboxes and you can, then there's a button at the bottom?
No. I don't know if I have this example right now. I can't think of any software easily like this that I can point you out, but it just like that wouldn't be the pattern for sure.
Yeah. I was actually thinking that like, what if this is really off of this issue, like way out of scope, but like, yeah, what if we did use the like bulk select type pattern where you have a checkboxes down the left and then you have the place button in the footer of the model, so like at the bottom of the screen, and you can select multiple, or you can select one or more, and you can place one or more blocks in the region. Because that would also allow us to shorten the get rid of the operations column.
I just shared.
Sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. No, you go first.
No, I just shared the link of the settings, the type trait module, where you actually, that's also a link, but you actually have like a div or like a wrappers, but actually it's something to choose. The link is on the, or it's the project type trait. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's not what I'm saying, but it's kind of what I'm saying, like the look and feel of if you go to any of the items of the images, you will see like, especially like the first one. That's what I meant. I mean, if you click in somewhere, that whole thing has all this information necessary. It could have either an icon, but maybe not in here. But that the whole thing is something you're clicking into. Well, actually, what I'm saying here, that's not like that. But yeah, just imagine in a visual perspective, you have the whole thing, and the whole thing is the thing that you're clicking, and the whole thing contains at the same time all the information.
Yeah.
That's what I would expect on a UI perspective. So sorry, I wouldn't add the link to the left and remove the button on the right.
I agree with Christina, and one addition to your suggestion right before, Aaron, or more of a question, how often do you add more than one block at a time? And also sometimes you have additional config when you place a block. So I'm not sure if having several blocks at once added, if it would make sense. And also from the 80-20 use case perspective, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It would make sense.
How about an alternative thought? What if we used same pattern that Layout Builder uses? And where you have the off canvas tray and you have the list and it's like, you know, grouped by category. And the reason I'm suggesting that is because I believe the ultimate goal is to replace this interface with Layout Builder. I'm assuming that's still the goal. I think that was last time I checked. So if we know that that's like that endpoint, then what if we again, this isn't really, this is kind of getting away from the categorization thing, but like, I'm just wondering if we can, because then if we use the same way of doing it the Layout Builder does, which, yeah, Benji's bringing up just now. So it opens this model on the, well, the tray on the right here. We have the categories, and if we found a pattern that works for communicating what the type is, we could implement it for both this UI, well, in this UI, but then also if we were using the same UI for the place block, we would have inadvertently addressed the issue because we'd have a pattern that works for both Layout Builder and blocks.
And we do have the same categories here: core, forms, help.
Yeah. I can see a thumbs up from Ralph.
And we've separated out. I guess we have content blocks. Where does content fields come from?
That's a layout. I think that's the fields on the individual piece of content. So that's like an additional Layout Builder is adding in.
Okay.
But the other thing we could do here is we could use the vertical space then. So for instance, for content blocks below the name, we could then, or we could as part of the name or below it, describe what its type is. Functionally, this also has the filter and the button to create a block. So like functionally, it's the same. It does mean though that configuring a block would then also open in the tray, but again, that might be a good thing if we're trying to shift towards Layout Builder being eventually replacing that interface.
Okay, we have a little more than 10 minutes left. Sort of replacing the current interface with something similar to Layout Builder is a much larger issue than the one we started looking at. Already adding a column is a bigger change than originally suggested. Replacing the operations column with making the whole row clickable is also sort of expanding the scope. I think those are good ideas. I'm a little worried about sort of accidentally clicking if wherever I click is active. That makes it harder to scroll, because while I'm scrolling, I might accidentally click somewhere.
So I think we can still keep the scope tight if we say that we make this change on the layout builder path UI, and then later on if we want to recommend, there's in another issue that we just replace this with the layout builder pattern, we'll already have something in place that addresses the problem here.
Actually, despite the fact that we have less than 10 minutes and we should be wrapping up, I want to bring up another thing. We're sorting by category. Shouldn't we make that the first column? And we have this placeholder text filter by block
Yes.
name.
Yeah, that's something that is not okay.
Okay, thank you. And we have this.
Sorry, go ahead.
We have this placeholder text filter by block name. I think that for consistency, we should make this block name. And there's sort of no cost in terms of layout, because that's not going to be the whitest thing in the column. Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you were going to say that using the placeholder, the label as a placeholder is not a good usability pattern. It's not related to the organization of the table itself, but it's just something that should be changed at some point.
So you'd like to change the placeholder text?
Well, no, I would like that the label, or the action, the description that this is using would be actually a label, not a description, not a placeholder. Because if you start typing something inside, you completely lose the context of what you actually need to. So you start typing and you don't know then if it's just by block name or also category, which of them. So you lose important context.
Okay, so instead of using placeholder text, we should be using a label.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I don't think it's a big failure, but it's something that would be nice to improve.
Back to that, right? And then title placeholder. Remove this.
it doesn't make sense that the placeholder then it's exactly the same. So yeah, I would either remove that or just add another thing.
Part of me thinks we should just say filter by block and then keep the block name column as just block.
That makes sense also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of these are good suggestions and should be added as related issues. That since we're sorting by category, that should be the first column. We should replace the placeholder text with a label.
I'm not sure category should go first, because actually the thing that, because it could be confusing that all the, so on the first thing that you usually have on the left, especially in the left to right languages, is the most important thing. And usually the differentiator or the ID or something like that. The moment that you put for all of them exactly the same, it might be confusing. So I would suggest to actually show in some way that the category is actually the thing that is actually organizing or sorting or whatever, if that's okay. But I wouldn't put the category in the first place.
Okay, so instead of putting it up, making it the first column, we could add some sort of an icon to indicate that that this is the column we're sorting on.
Yeah, there is a design for that, I think, at least for Claro. I'm not sure, somewhere. I mean, the moment that you can actually sort that somehow, if you can actually do something on the table head, you have an icon for Claro in there.
Right.
There is just the arrow, and that's all. But it's pointing somewhere and it's giving some clues.
Okay, so now we're down to 3 minutes left. Aaron, would you like to leave a comment on the issue summarizing this discussion?
Yeah, this is a tricky one to summarize. So I might wait till the recording, we have the recording published, but yeah, I don't know if we have a for this I don't know what we want to conclude in terms of the immediate issue, or if we just want to recommend a bunch of, you know, the things we've discussed and then say postpone it on something else, or repoint it to layout builder, or what we want to do. Because we could, there's more, I mean, we probably could, like, other ideas could be just appending the block type to the name of the block in like parentheses, or yeah, doing something else.
Okay, although as Ralph points out, that has issues with increasing the number of words you have to scan.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't have a firm recommendation, then we can just label it as suggestions, things to consider.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it'll become a non-issue in the future.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Christina.
Have a nice weekend, Christina.
Bye.
But in regards of the current state of the issue, I'm uncertain if it would be good if it would get in the form it is right now. Also, so it's tricky.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want it to be committed in its current, with the current you know, proposal. So,
but how to proceed and which parts of the points we came up with today, that's difficult. maybe the best choice might be sum it up, but also provide the link to the recording and let, for example, the subsystem maintainers watch it and listen along. That way they get a better understanding about the whole scope and the problems we've outlined.
Yeah, and maybe we should I mean, to me, adding the extra columns seemed like the most solid solution that we had. So maybe we should just make that as a suggestion. And then also suggest here's some other thing, like the other things that we've noted around, like the ordering and the labeling, and then, you know, maybe just actually swapping this out for the layer builder pattern, but as you know, follow-up issues.
Yeah, and swapping it out for layout builder is something that might happen eventually, but who knows when. I don't want to suggest not doing anything until then. But we are at the top of the hour, so so let's add some suggestions. And yes, I think the additional column is probably the best incremental step from the current patch.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks both. Bye.
Have a nice
Have a good
weekend.
weekend.
Bye. You too.
Bye.